And there are extremely concrete practical consequences to this observation. Because in this world, which is open and everyone sees what happens in every other corner of the world, you cannot excel, you cannot attract the youngsters of the Jewish people all around the world to identify and be proud of Israel if we do not live up to certain standards that are parts of the zeitgeist of the 21st century. The fulfillment of the Zionist dream will come only out of our strengths, military strengths, and readiness to fight for our defense is a precondition, but it will not come without the quality of education, the cohesion of the society that has to do with the internal gaps within the society, with the kind of sense of common purpose and the capacity to unite our own people here in Israel around the crucial issues that are on the table. I think that our reality is tough, painful, and simple. And I see here Danny Dayan and over there Harel, so I do not expect even that all people here will agree with what I said, but I tell you, frankly, I believe that these are the most important elements. If we cannot agree upon them, we are undermining our effectiveness as a coherent movement that goes against all odds through history, as the Zionist movement did from day one. Between the Jordan River, few dozens of miles to the east, and the Mediterranean, few dozen miles to the west, there live probably 12 million people. 7.5 million Israelis and 4.5 million Palestinians. And the Palestinians, this block of millions, have national aspirations. It was already Jabotinsky, the father of revisionism, who said that they are not a, איך אומרים אספסוף? They are not a mob, a dust. They are a people. He said it painfully, but he said they are people. We cannot buy them by bestowing upon them advancement, enlightenment, economic benefits. They are people with national aspirations. And it was Jabotinsky 70 or 80 years ago. Few years later, Ben-Gurion found it himself. He went to meet with Musa al-Alami and found it. He didn't tell it to our public because he wanted to help the people hopeful enough against the numerical odds. But he realized and wrote down the realities. Now, between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, there live these two blocks, 7.5 million Israelis, 4.5 million Palestinians. If those Palestinians cannot vote, or if they can vote, it's a binational state, par excellence. Even if we call it the Jewish state, homeland to the Jewish people in the heritage of David the king. It doesn't matter. It will be in reality what it is. If 4.5 million Palestinians with national aspiration will vote for the Knesset, the results will be the end of Zionist dream. And if we do not let them vote and think that we can keep in the 21st century for another 43 years, reigning over another people without the right to vote, it will be a non-democratic state. I don't want to go further into another examples of these practices in other corners of the world. But basically, the compelling imperative we face, and I'm not glad to find it, but that's the reality, and we cannot afford ignoring the realities. The reality is that if Israel continues to reign over the whole area, and there is only one political unit named Israel between the river and the Mediterranean, this state called Israel will become inevitably either non-democratic or non-Jewish, and neither is the Zionist dream. So we are not doing it for them. We are not making a favor to the Palestinians. We are acting to rescue our own identity and future by being able to look reality at the eye and draw the consequences and make what should be done, and even the answer is simple. It's not because we don't have the right. We have the biblical heavenly promise. It was with us all along the way. We have affiliation. Jews really prayed to come back here for 2,000 years. And I don't believe that we could stand the hardships of creating a new political entity if we happen to be in Uganda or in Argentina. It's only here that we could find within ourselves the inner energies needed to stand the hardships. But it's answer to the realities. And I keep telling my colleagues, we have here many people, believers, who read into the Bible. I told them, look at the maps of the two previous experiments that we have done in stepping on the political stage, namely having a Jewish sovereignty. The kingdom of David, 220 years, and then the Maccabean kingdom, 80 or 100, it depends how you count. In both cases, you see how the borders are changed. We had the Brit Ben Abtarim even then. We had the heavenly promise. We had the right. But the concrete borders were changing along the generations according to the political realities. And it is now a political realities that we have to sit down and solve it according to a quite simple lines. It won't be easy, but it's simple. We have to delineate a border within Eretz Israel with a lot of pain, but we have to do it according to security and demographic considerations. Within it, we should have a solid Jewish majority for generations to come. Beyond it, we have the opportunity for a Palestinian state, demilitarized Palestinian state, but viable one economically, territorially, politically, and so on. We have to solve the refugee issues through settlement in other Arab countries in the rest of the world, not in Israel. We have to keep the settlement blocks inside Israel, but to find a reasonable solution to the isolated settlement, which includes some 20% probably of the Israeli settlements there. And we have to either bring them into the settlement blocks or into Israel, or probably in few cases to find an arrangement that they can keep living there. We have to find a solution for Jerusalem, based on the fact that maybe the older one among you remember that after the 6 Days War, we annexed to Jerusalem some 28 cities and villages from the whole area around, and made Jerusalem much wider. So it probably was a clever step at the time, probably needed at the time. It probably creates a good starting point to certain kind of aspects of negotiations. But we'll have to solve it somehow, bearing in mind the heavy population in some of the Arab neighborhoods. And we'll have to solve the issue of the Holy Basin in a way which is congruent with our rights, with our affiliations, under spatial arrangements. And I know that it sounds painful, extremely painful, but that's part of the reality. We have to find this formula in order to be able at the end of an agreement to sign it and write down this agreement as mutually agreed by both sides is the end of conflict and finality of mutual claims. And it probably is surprising, but we have heard Abu Mazen saying loud and clear a few days ago that he is ready, if an agreement is achieved, to sign it with this finalizing paragraph. I don't believe that it will be simple. I met Abu Mazen a few times in the last several weeks. He asked me, Ehud, tell me, what had changed since we were there at Camp David 10 years ago? I told him a lot had changed. When I came back from Camp David, two of my harshest critics were Tzipi Livni and Ehud Olmert. Look where they are now. Even on your side, I remember you, Abu Mazen, he left before the end. He let Arafat be at the moment. And now you say, and he told me that he also told it in his English to, which is like mine, to some American Jewish audiences, that he is ready to now. He was totally against any agreement 10 years ago because it was not good enough. But he is now ready to say something that they couldn't say 10 years ago, that they are ready to sign an agreement ending with end of conflict, finality of claims. I told him there are other things that changed as well. I still remember the young captain, you Arabs competing with each other with antagonizing statements. No recognition, no negotiations, no peace. Whatever had been brought by force will be brought back by force, or taken by force, brought back by force. And now you, the Arab players, are competing with each other. Whose peace plan will be adopted by the rest of the world as a reference for the peace conference? And we have our, I told him, honestly, we have our reservation pages of them from each and every Arab plan. But it's still a matter of fact that the Arab community competing with each other about whose peace plan will be adopted. And some of them, in spite of all the list of reservations we have, are not that inconceivable for negotiation. I think that we have to think of it through the filter of our real goals, and being able to judge the alternatives. The alternatives are much worse. And in statesmanship, you are not making choices between two goods. That's simple. Whatever you choose, you can't make a mistake. Or even between a good alternative and a bad one. Because that makes it simple. You always choose the good one. It's always between two evils or two bad bad proposals, and it's sometimes not easy to judge which one is worse. It depended upon many elements which are still under the fog of the future. So we have to compare it, but we have to think of it. One alternative is the Bosnia, Balkan-like situation, or Belfast-like situation. I don't like it. Another is a one-state solution. I don't like it either. In fact, I should admit that on corners of the Israeli society, on both sides, in the extreme right, there are some people who behave as if they accept it. Probably they expect still a heavenly intervention that will avoid it in the last moment, but we learned in our history, even the recent one, not to rely upon heavenly interventions when real troubles come into our face. But also on the left side, there are people that I cannot understand. They behave as if the post-Zionism and post-modern world where every narrative has the same status brought them to accept the justice or accept the views of our rivals. And they also talk about binational state practically. I don't like it. And beyond all these elements, the most disturbing one in my judgment is the risk, which I feel is a millimeter underneath the surface, of forceful delegitimization of Israel. And it happens now not in Mauritania or Tanzania, but in Scandinavia and Britannia. And that makes it much more complicated. And we hear like someone who is moving in a train with closed or kind of blanks on the windows, and we ignore what happens. Living in a bubble. Restaurants are good time. You can make good time in Tel Aviv, even in Jerusalem, and the country is quiet. security is good, and people feel, why the hell we have to care? Whoever goes throughout the world and you're spending most of your time outside the country, you feel it. I met with heads of trade unions from the whole the world. They told me, we are trying to help you, but we feel that we are collapsing under the pressures to start boycotts on Israel, on products from the settlements at first, then we'll widen it to whoever supports, and then it will come through the academy and through some NGOs, and even without any direct intervention of government, we will start to feel it much faster than we believe.